Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spawn Daily, a Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration, and a testament to our insanity as Rocky and I try to read every issue of the regular Spawn series as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of Spawn this year. So we're over a week in. We haven't missed a day yet, so still going strong. And at some point, we may fold in some other mini-series that were Spawn related, like Violator and Medieval Spawn, Witchblade, and some of that stuff. But in the meantime, we're just covering the regular series. By the time the end of the year rolls around, it'll be up somewhere between 330 and 340. So we have a little bit of a cushion, and we'll see how far we can go. But man, we're on issue, what is this, 20 that we're talking about, 21 that we're talking about today? Yeah, 21. And I only 21 issues in, I feel like a lot of the mythology of Spawn and the story of Spawn is pretty well established at this point. But to your point that you made a couple of episodes ago, we're still discovering things about his powers, namely Harry Houdini teaching him how to, conjure things out of thin air with his costume. So who knows how his powers and whatnot will continue to grow as things roll around. But this one felt a little bit like a catch-up issue with McFarlane back on pencils and words. What do you think?
Yeah, I really liked it here, and I just want to apologize. Hopefully you can't hear in the background. I got my daughter behind me. I guess she's being moved, but in any event, I really like this. I did enjoy this issue, but boy, I could tell McFarlane is back. It was very easy to tell that McFarlane was back, and I don't say that in an insulting way. I just mean that he's sort of back, heavy on the exposition that was in a way that's really impossible to sort of ignore. But again, it's good to see McFarlane back. I love the page itself. I mean, the cover is fantastic. I mean, I actually do kind of I like the more clear, crisp lines of that McFarlane has, at least on the cover here. When McFarlane is on his A game here, and he's either inking himself or he's having somebody do the inks. I actually do prefer his look on Spawn, although Greg Capullo is pretty good as well. But this issue is called The Hunt, and we continue to learn more about what is going on, as you indicated. The issue starts off with, it looks like somebody is stitching up Spawn, and it ends up it's this one of the homeless people, I guess the bums that live in the streets with him, is actually stitching up Spawn's face. When we reviewed issue 20, it was during last issue when Spawn worked with Houdini to prevent to battle against the terrorists that were going to essentially create an atomic explosion. Houdini transported the atom bomb away to a place called the Overlap, but in the process of doing that, Spawn got shot in the face, and for those just listening on the podcast, I can tell you that Spawn looks ugly to begin with, and McFarlane is very good at drawing just how ugly and burnt Spawn is. But boy, he does a really great job here of showing literally his face being stitched together by shoelaces. I mean, this street person named Bobby is his name. He's actually given Spawn a pep talk. Spawn's all depressed, because of his life, and in the ongoing dialogue that ensues, it's through the dialogue that we in a sense get another recap of what's gone on. And Bobby's talking. This Bobby character is talking about he uses his own shoelaces at one point to literally to lace up Spawn's face, and he tells Spawn that, look, and this is where McFarlane kind of goes back to what has become one of his habits. He wants to reinforce just how good Spawn is. And this Bobby character is telling Spawn, trying to give him a pep talk, saying, look, we look up to you here. We look up to you here. And then to really nail the point home. Bobby talks about his own life, how his own wife, that he used to be a successful businessman. His wife died of brain cancer, and that he never overcame that. He never recovered from it. He let the loss of his wife and the loss of his previous life basically destroy him, and he's now accepted his life as basically being a bum on the streets and a homeless person. And Spawn expresses regret and essentially apologizes to him, and he says, don't apologize to me. This is my life now. And but basically he's telling him, just continue to we look up to you. You're okay, Spawn. So he's giving Al Simmons a pep talk, saying, don't give up. Don't become like me. Don't assume that this being a street person, that this is your destiny, that, things are going to be okay. But, use my life, my failure of my failure in the narrative of my life. Use that as an example. Don't give up. We look up to you. Try to see what your potential is. Try to see the potential that we see in you, who are your friends. And you might not have the life you had, but you have friends now and we're your friends. Again, we've got this before in previous issues, but it's really hammered home here again. And one compliment I'll give McFarlane is that it's, at least this is hammered home in a dialogue where we get to know something about this Bobby character, and we get to see some character building with respect to the people on the street that Spawn actually lives with and cares about, and that these aren't just, finally we're getting a little bit. McFarlane is humanizing the homeless people. That these aren't just, they're not all drug dealers. They're not all terrible people. These are people whose life circumstances have put them in their position. Now I say that with a little bit of a shit-eating grin on my face, because there are other homeless people who are criminals and who are drug dealers that we're going to be getting to in this issue coming up here, because typical McFarlane fashion, when we get one end of the spectrum, we often get the other end of the spectrum very quickly to where things lie.
Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, you do feel bad for the Bobby character. He lost his wife, basically crawled inside a bottle, and being a drunk cost him everything. And yeah, it's definitely circumstance. You kind of wonder. It seems like the reason that Spawn needs this pep talk is the fact that his face has been split in half, and then like you said, sewn back together with an old shoelace. But the reason I pointed it out last time when we talked is because he gets shot in the forehead, and you do see some subsequent drawings of Spawn by Greg Capullo where you do see some kind of green, blood or energy or whatever it is coming out of his forehead. But here, it literally looks like somebody took an axe and buried it in his face. And
Yeah.
And this goes to what I mentioned last time about talking about some continuity stuff, some sort of behind the scenes. And there's even an editorial note that comes from Tom Orzechowski himself that says, because when Bobby asks, how did you get so jacked up? Spawn's response is, ran into some bozo in black, which I guess, bozo in black, Houdini? So he's blaming it on Houdini that he got shot in the face when he was actually protecting Terry Fitzgerald. Yeah. But here's the point. 19 and 20 came out after 21. Right? So Spawn, and I remember when it happened because people were talking about it was right in that period of time when Image books were late and it was causing a lot of consternation. And so supposedly that's exactly what happened here. 19 and 20 were solicited, and I don't know if it was because Orzechowski was writing it or it was this Grossberg guy or why it was late. Maybe Capullo was struggling, maybe got sick. I don't know. But the point being that they ended up having to cancel them. Todd McFarlane's comic book publishing company, Todd McFarlane's Productions, ended up having to cancel 19 and 20 and resolicit them. So Spawn went from like issue 18 and then nothing for 2 months, and then 21 came out. And then eventually 19 and 20 came out. And the reason I pointed out is, so I had fallen off Spawn at that point. I was tired of it being late. But you wonder if the people were like, oh man, I really got to go read 19 and 20 when it comes out, because there must be at some point Spawn gets his face cut in half by a sword or a knife or a axe or whatever by some guy in black. And then when you go back, like if you actually have read 21 first and then went back and looked at it, you're like, wait, where's the point where he gets his face
Yeah.
cut in half.
It's a good point. He actually doesn't. He just
Oh,
gets shot. There's one
yeah,
scene
he
where he
just
gets
gets
shot,
shot.
but that's it.
Yeah, but when you look at his face here, all sewn up, and don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic image from McFarlane. It split from his forehead all the way down to his chin. So, and it stays like this for a long time in the comic. So I just wanted to point that out. I went and did some research because I didn't remember. I remembered it came out of order. I had forgotten that it came out of order until I saw this editorial note from Tom Orzechowski. Then it jogged my memory. Oh yeah, I remember that because people were pissed at the
Yeah.
time. And then I went back and did a little research. There wasn't some great big conspiracy or anything. That just 19 and 20 were late. And you wonder, yeah, again, I don't know if it was Capullo. McFarlane is back on the art duties here. So I mean, in a lot of detail, we've talked in the past last couple issues McFarlane drew. You didn't have a lot of detail
Yeah.
in the backgrounds, but here he's kind of back to his old detailed self. So
Well,
just thought I'd point that out.
no, it's a really good point, and so not only was there, of course, real world influence, and that might explain some of this slight discrepancy here, in terms of the in story continuity, but also I think it's a little wonky in terms of Spawn's powers. I mean, we know in the previous two issues that came out after, as you indicate, that Houdini basically taught Spawn to use his powers more efficiently and taught Spawn how to use powers to, actually physically create things from photons and atoms, and to manipulate things and manipulate the material world, and understand how magic can work in conjunction with the real world, and magic works in conjunction with reality, not against it, and those types of things. And yet, one of the questions I have is, why can't Spawn heal himself?
Yeah,
I mean, why doesn't Spawn heal himself? Why this scene seems forced, like almost like this scene almost seems to exist to allow McFarlane to show off his cool visuals, because this is a spectacular image with Spawn's face, with the shoelaces as stitches, with the cracked out. I mean, it looks amazing. It really does. And for that reason, I'm forgiving of the I don't need an answer to my question. I'm assuming Spawn just decided not to heal himself. But Spawn could have easily manifested stitches. He didn't need to use his homeless, his buddy's shoelaces. The whole thing just seems, again, it's one of those things you kind of let go because, I will say this
it looks
about,
cool. Yeah, you let it go because it looks cool.
Yeah, it looks cool. It's like, okay, whatever, we'll go with it. But in any event, the story continues. So Spawn is given this pep talk. And there's a great transition where it shows the face of this Bobby with a grin on his face, and right below that, the transition to the next scene, it shows the face of Jason Wynn. Now, what is shocking about that is that how is Jason Wynn still alive? We thought Jason Wynn. We thought Jason Wynn. We know he became the anti-Spawn. Jason Wynn was whisked off, and he was taken to the Angel satellite and became sort of like an agent working ostensibly for the same organization that we think that Angela was working for, at least a similar one, and that his goal as anti-Spawn, his memories was to kill Spawn, and we were unclear as to what Jason Wynn's memories were. He didn't, as the anti-Spawn, it was not clear that anti-Spawn was even conscious of his Jason Wynn persona. And so there's a lot of questions, and Spawn defeated Anti-Spawn, and then Anti-Spawn was whisked away back up into the satellite, and we haven't seen him since, but we assume that he would be healed, that Jason Wynn would be healed up and sent back down at some point as Anti-Spawn to make a second attempt to kill Spawn. But instead, what we get, and it's a surprise in this issue, is that suddenly Jason Wynn is back. We're told through the dialogue and narration that he's been missing for 2 days. So he was only gone for 2 days. And he's a couple of his underlings are advising him that they finished their report, and they can't find anything incriminating against Terry Fitzgerald. So it was clear that Jason Wynn wanted to try to set Terry Fitzgerald up, to blame something on Terry Fitzgerald. And of course, but unfortunately, the debacle that was caused by Jason Wynn's disappearance and the anti-Spawn and the news had come out, and after all the evidence has come in, it's clear that the violator, this clown, is responsible for the death of all these other mobster figures, and Terry Fitzgerald is not implicated in that. The appearance of anti-spawn and the chaos caused by that, I mean, it threw a wrench into whatever scheme Jason Wynn was trying to create, whatever false flag or whatever machinations Jason Wynn had in wanting to set Terry Fitzgerald up to take the fall for something. We're not sure what it is, in much the same way as he set things up for Al Simmons to take the fall that eventually led Al Simmons to become Spawn. That has not worked. Now, Jason Wynn is adamant here that if he gets angry with his underlings, saying, you keep investigating Terry Fitzgerald, the FBI, CIA. Jason Wynn is head of intelligence operations in the U.S. Apparently, he's got all this power and control. He's an enormously powerful and influential person. And he even tells his underlings to go and try to find something against Wanda. And so the central mystery here, and probably the one that is the largest one moving forward, is what happened to Jason Wynn? How did he come back? Does he remember being anti-Spawn? He seems to be healed. He seems to even be in better shape than he was. Jace, you mentioned as a commentary, you talked about Jason Wynn. Even when Jason Wynn was working out in issue 17 or 18, he had a little bit of a belly on him. Was muscular. And here Jason Wynn almost seems to be in, doesn't have his, arguably doesn't have his belly anymore. He seems to be a big man, but he seems to be healthy, arguably healthier than he's ever been. So it's very interesting in terms of, where is this going? So that's a pretty major revelation. We then get a transition and we get Sam and Twitch. So great to see these two again. And Sam and Twitch, they're still pissed off at Spawn. They're pissed off because they're still pissed off with Billy Kincaid showing up dead in their office because they were investigated. I mean, Spawn obviously had a sense of humor. He catches the serial killer. Sam and Twitch, hated Billy Kincaid as much as anybody, but they didn't expect to see Billy Kincaid end up dead, literally hanging from their office at the police station. That led to an investigation. So Sam and Twitch are a little bit pissed off, and they want to find Spawn. This is where things get kind of funny for me, because it leads to arguably the best line of dialogue. Well, no, I'm going to say this is the best line of dialogue in this entire issue. So Sam is questioning this street bum. And I said before how in the issue started off where McFarlane really humanizes this guy named Bobby, who lost his wife to cancer and although homeless, has a high moral code and looks up to Spawn, and he doesn't want Spawn to follow his life, the life path that his did. And then here we get Sam and Twitch interrogating this other street bum, who McFarlane goes out of his way in the narration in the dialogue. Sam describes this guy as being a drug dealer, selling drugs to kids, a crack dealer. Just literally selling illegal firearms, and all with the goal here of getting this guy. Sam wants this guy to be a snitch. He wants information on where he can find Spawn. And at one point he says to this guy, he goes, you get me information on Spawn, or you'll be put away so long you'll wish you bought stock in the Vaseline company. I mean the implications of this. If you just let your
and then he says, "Do I make myself clear, Mr. Sweet Cheeks?" Yeah. So just to ram it home exactly what they're talking about here with the Vaseline and the Sweet Cheeks.
Oh man. And it's funny because it sort of underscores one of the it underscores the complexity, or it's very simple, but there's a complexity to the setting here, because one of the things that we have to be mindful of is, Spawn is not the police. Spawn is friends with the homeless people, of the people of the street. Spawn doesn't interrogate them. And it's interesting because Spawn must know that a lot of the homeless people probably are criminals, probably engage in some degree of criminal activity, but he doesn't, he's not judge, jury, or executioner. They're his friends, and he's got to know that some of them engage in criminal conduct or drug dealing. And so I just find it kind of interesting here that Sam and Twitch really are treating. I mean, the way they treat this guy is absolutely terrible. I mean, it certainly probably would constitute police brutality by any definition, but it's hard not to smile reading the dialogue here because Sam does not care about this guy at all. It's like, you find me Spawn, and you find me him quick. And anyways, I thought it really, really worked. And so as the story, as it proceeds, we get oh man, oh yeah, okay, sorry. There was another line of dialogue here that is coming up. We have a scene transition then where another homeless person, in the alley walks up to Spawn and says, "Hey, Spawn, there's a guy over there a couple blocks away. He's looking for you, Spawn, and he thinks you're a pussy." I mean, this is the actual dialogue. I mean, it almost read like a bad Western. I mean, it's like, the big bully on the street, some guy comes in and he wants to knock off the top dog. And it's just hilarious. I mean, it says, and it isn't just some guy. It's Spawn. Hey, some Nazi skinhead is looking for you, says you're a pussy. I mean, come on. And then McFarlane goes out of his way in the narration, again, over expository in my mind, but just to ram the point home that, Spawn is just so frustrated with all these punks want to come to his neighborhood to try to one-up him and try to dethrone him. And, he just wants to be left alone. And, just really this poor Spawn character, poor Al Simmons, he just wants to be left alone to live his life and meander in a pit of self-despair. But, there's always somebody that wants a piece of him. I'm reminded of that scene in Godfather 3, Al Pacino. Every time I try to get out, they try to pull me back in. There's always some punk that wants a piece of me, whether it's from heaven or hell or just on the streets themselves. But in any event, so Spawn then approaches this guy, and basically it's not anybody who's powerful or anything. It's just the guy is basically just warning him that because he was sent by Vito Gravano, otherwise known as Anthony Tony Twistelli, but he's Vito Gravano, and he's the mobster that he's looking for Spawn. He wants to get revenge. Just to recap a little bit, in the earlier issues, when the Violator, the clown, that devilish clown Violator, was killing all mobsters, hoping that Spawn would get the blame, and Vito Gravano sent Overtkill to try to take out Spawn, that failed spectacularly. Spawn pretty much dealt with Overtkill and then attacked Vito Gravano and threatened him in his own office. And Vito wants revenge. And we should mention at this point that there was apparently a miniseries at the time called The Violator had his own miniseries, and a character by the name of Admonisher. Vito Gravano sent a hitman by the name of Admonisher against the Violator. And that's why Violator is not in this story, because the Violator is having his own adventures, so to speak. He's being taken out by the Admonisher in his own miniseries at the time, and he ends up essentially going back to hell with his 4 brothers. So that's what's happening off the scene here. So that's why Violator doesn't show up in this story. So as the story progresses, it's clear that I should say that I'm just collecting my thoughts here. One of the things that threw me is that because Violator was off the playing field, I was kind of wondering exactly what was going to happen, what was going on. And I was a little surprised that Vito Gravano, this mobster who doesn't have any power, he's just a mobster, and he has to know how powerful Spawn is. I'm surprised, like, what is he really hoping to achieve? And this Spawn obviously sends this street person who confronted him back back to Vito Gravano. He's all beaten up, and he tells Vito. I mean, he basically relays the message from Spawn. I mean, because Spawn can't believe it. He thinks Vito Gravano is just a punk. He's just a small player. He's a punk. Leave me alone. But it's quite obvious that Vito wants to take him off the playing field, and he's angry with him, and that's really it. Vito just wants to get revenge. And we find out that it was Vito Gravano himself who also hires the hitman called the Admonisher to take out Violator, and that goes off into a separate mini series. And then we get a huge info dump by all the broadcasters again, with the entertainment networks, CNN, and the liberal and the conservative media, which McFarlane didn't have a problem portraying back in the day. A huge info dump, and somehow all these. We talked about before the amount of information that these media moguls know, and that these broadcasters know. I mean, we get a full summary of all the events. Again, it was just an over expositional dump of information that was completely unnecessary, but we got it anyway. And how these reporters would be privy to all this information. I think that it was just McFarlane's way to try to, instead of just having too much omniscient, narration in just a bunch of expository boxes scattered all over the page, he's putting it through the media. But that didn't quite work for me, and that's really how the issue ends. So it ends with a huge revelation that Jason Wynn is back. He seems to be human again. He's not anti-Spawn. It's not clear if he has memories of being anti-Spawn. We know Vito Gravano wants to take out Spawn again and is doing what he can to facilitate that. We know Overtkill is not dead, that Vito Gravano is working on resurrecting Overtkill to send against Spawn. And that's how the issue ends, with Spawn sitting all depressed in an alley, looking at what is left of his life at this moment. So a lot happens. I thought it was an overall good issue, but the dialogue here was hilarious. Again, buy stock in a Vaseline company, and Spawn is a pussy. There were some fun moments here. I had fun reading this. But again, if I think too hard about it, the one ongoing consistent criticism, and I'm still putting it in the minor category because I'm having fun, and that is just there's often I don't need all the information, but I will point out one of the things you said before, that there's no question that for new readers, you could almost pick up, whether if you started reading Spawn at issue 1, at any issue through issues 1 through 21, almost any issue, you could start reading Spawn and understand the character. And that's both a compliment to McFarlane's approach to storytelling, because it's a little bit more, I think, old school, but it's also maybe detracts from loyal readers who don't need a full recap every single time. Because let's not forget, there's a reason why in most traditional Marvel comics, for example, and even DC, there's that little recap at the first page, bitten by a radioactive spider, young Peter Parker gained the powers of a spider, and you just need a little blurb. You don't need full double page narration for recaps. But in any event, I had fun with it. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think things get missed because people see that wall of text. Because yeah, you're right. Earlier, Jason Wynn shows up, and I had those same questions. It's easily missed because in that wall of text, actually, the CNN reporter mentions. I'll see if I can find it here as I'm. So Wynn is back after being gone for 2 days. Underwent some 60 physical and psychological tests after being discovered crumpled on his office floor the previous Friday, apparently by a member of the custodial staff. Wynn claims no recollection of anything that occurred during his absence. So we know he doesn't remember being anti-Spawn. Don't know how he got returned. So yeah, it was taken from the gymnasium and then returned. So yeah, easy to miss those kind of things when it's these giant walls of text. The only thing I can theorize is that when the powers that be on that satellite brought Wynn back up, they talked about, well, we need to make him more powerful, run more tests, whatever. maybe they're prepping and they're going to suck Jason Wynn back up at some point. Maybe they're going to try a different vessel. Who knows? But yeah, I was shocked to see Wynn just show back up. At least we got this wall of text at the end to give us a couple sentences of explanation. Strange to put it so far in the back of the book. My biggest criticism of the book, it's not even the fact that Spawn's face is somehow split completely from top to bottom, even though no real reason for it to have happened in the previous issue. It's the dialogue that you mentioned. And while it can be fun at times, and it is with the Vaseline and the sweet cheeks and the Spawn's a pussy, um, it can be painful at times too. I think the worst for me were the supposed two FBI agents that come to talk to Terry Fitzgerald, um, calling him Fitzy, and uh, when his phone rings, shut up, Weasel. Ain't nothing gonna save your neck, turncoat. Now get your phone. Like, who is intelligent enough to be an agent of the FBI that's gonna talk like that? They talk like 5 cent mobsters,
Yeah.
and Dracula or Vito Vittorio Graves talks that way as well, but he is a 2-bit mobster, so you expect him to talk that way, not these not these
Yeah.
FBI guys.
Yeah,
So
and the other thing
uh,
that doesn't make sense, just to quickly add to that point, is Jason Wynn wants them to find something incriminating against Terry Fitzgerald. So why would they play their hand? Why would they go to Terry Fitzgerald and basically give him? I mean, by intimidating like this, they're giving him a heads up that they're hunting him. They're going for him. I mean, it would seem to me a more tactically efficient thing is to just stay in the shadows and wait for Terry to screw up if he's going to screw up. It just seemed like again, it's McFarlane's way of just making sure the bad guy making sure that the bad guys are really bad. They're not just bad; they're like bad, or they're stupid bad, or they're funny bad,
yeah,
or the dialogue isn't just funny; it's over the top nonsense, and there's always one step above. There's a person that's a bully, and then there's a person who's really a bully and an intimidator, and then you see that both in the fight scenes and the dialogue and the shit-eating grins on the villains versus the good guys. I mean, in many ways, this is the epitome of what many ways a comic book is traditionally supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a mystery all the time. So I think in that way, I'm getting a greater appreciation for this. And I kind of wish I'd have continued to read it past issue 12 back in the day because I'm enjoying this so far.
yeah. I feel the same way. I wish I had been reading it all along. Uh, but again, I mean, the biggest reason I fell off for me was just the lateness of the issues. It's too hard to keep track, and I didn't have when I was at this time. I didn't have a comic shop. Well, I think when these were coming out, yeah, I was in college, and there wasn't a comic shop within 45 minutes, so made it tougher for me. Um, the other thing that I'll say, because not only can we tell McFarlane's back based on the scripting and the over exposition, obviously the art style. As soon as you open that first page, you're like, oh, McFarlane's back. And McFarlane himself, and you've said this before, Rocky. McFarlane himself says Greg Capullo is a better Spawn artist than he is. Um, and I always kind of poo-pooed that. I'm like, oh man, Spawn is a McFarlane creation. McFarlane should be the one that draws it. And I'm a big fan of McFarlane's art from back in the day, from Infinity Incorporated and Incredible Hulk, and obviously his Spider-Man work. I gotta admit, like, I missed the Capullo art a little bit on this issue. So I'm not saying that I prefer Capullo over McFarlane. I'm not to that point yet, but I may find myself agreeing with Todd at some point that I actually like Capullo's art on Spawn better. Like the possibility. I'm not saying I do. I'm just saying the possibility. The seed has been planted that I may find myself in that camp at some point. But I mean, the art and the color work here is fantastic. It's as dynamic as anything Todd's done. And I mentioned, maybe he had a little more time to draw this. The backgrounds are back in detail as well, which really helps to sell the art. So
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I mean the distinctions between the Capullo styles and McFarlane style. I mean, look, I could confuse the two. I'm not going to pretend to be some artistic, I could be fooled here. I think both have done a really, really great job. And the art in this particular issue was really good. And It's and when art is that good that I am prepared to forgive some maybe continuity or in-story continuity glitches, like why doesn't Spawn heal himself? Well, quite frankly, I'm glad he didn't, and I'm glad he got stitched up
Yeah.
because we got a gorgeous double-page spread showing, or at least one full page of Spawn with his face stitched in half with shoelaces. I mean, this is horror stuff. This is what you look for in a comic book about a hell spawn. I mean, come on. This was again, this is not pretending, this isn't pretending to be Shakespeare by any stretch of the imagination. This is a fun, action-packed comic book about a guy who's basically ended up making a very bad deal with the with the devil, and we got heaven involved, we got magic users involved, and we got street people involved, we got mobsters involved. I mean, McFarlane is doing a good job. We got the media involved, we got politics involved. This thing has it all. Uh, I mean, I'm going to read something. It's from at one point the gangster here, Vito Galvano. He was Guido Gravano. He was his original name was Antonio Tony Twist Twistelli, and this led to a lawsuit because a Canadian hockey player. He based the character on a Canadian hockey player enforcer called Tony Twist. Now, this Tony Twist sued McFarlane in 1997. 10 years later, in 2007, the lawsuit finally ended. Tony McFarlane ended up paying $5 million to Tony Twist. But when he was asked about his portrayal, normally Tony Twist, he's an enforcer. He had nothing against McFarlane. But as Spawn became more popular, the comment he made was about his character, Tony Twist, because by the way, in real life, this Tony Twist character, he's a good-looking guy. He's a good-looking hockey player, enforcer. And this is what he had to say about the character of Vito Gravano, who was referred to as Antonio Twistelli. He says, look, talking about the character of Vito, he says, I'm in pink thong underwear, smoking a cigar, ordering the kidnapping of a child while two women on a couch are making out with each other. He goes, even if I am a good guy, I don't like that depiction. So, and the reason why I bring up the lawsuit, and the reason why McFarlane ultimately lost the lawsuit, is precisely because of what you and I have been talking about. It's McFarlane's propensity to always go to the extremes that ultimately had him lose that lawsuit, because he made sure that the bad guys are very, very bad, almost over the top bad. I mean, Vito Gravano isn't just a mobster; he's a real dick. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a dick he's an unlikable person. I mean, he doesn't even try to hide the excesses of his lifestyle. I mean, everybody is expendable. He treats women badly, everyone badly. I mean, again, smoking a cigar, wearing a pink thong, hates everybody. I mean, just you're always having a shit-eating grin on his face, the dark glasses, fat, overweight. I mean, you can't blame Tony Twist in real life to say, hey, you know what, enough already. I mean, and he did ultimately end up getting $5 million as a settlement. So it took 10 years, but he did get it. But I just put that out there that sometimes the excesses that are brought to these comic books, they do have consequences and just some real world realities. You got to be careful who you portray in your comic books, because as Todd McFarlane found out, you could get sued for it.
Yeah. Between that and the Neil Gaiman thing, some people, there's theories about things McFarlane had to do because of that. But anyway, it was a fun issue, a little bit of a setup issue, like I said, a little bit of a catch-up issue. Let's maneuver everybody into place. Let's put Spawn in place. Let's make sure people know Overtkill's still around. The mob hasn't forgotten about Spawn, because we talked about that right before we went down the path of dealing with who killed Spawn with Chapel, and then the last couple of issues dealing with Malbolgia and magic and whatnot. Here's McFarlane back to remind us, hey, the real nemesis of Spawn is the mob. So they're back in full effect here. We get what Sam and Twitch is up to. Again, Overkill, like I mentioned, Terry Fitzgerald and Wanda. So yeah, McFarlane's back. He's putting everything back where he wants it, and we'll continue with The Hunt Part 2 in tomorrow's episode of the Daily Spawn. So don't forget, everybody, be sure you head over to YouTube if you have not. If you're not watching the episodes on YouTube, you can check them out there and see the art as we're talking about it. Be sure you go to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! And subscribe. Ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out, and like this video. If you always watch on YouTube, you should also go and subscribe to the Comic Source audio only. So go to your favorite podcasting app on your smart device or podcasting platform, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, what have you. And just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe, because we put out plenty of content that's not on YouTube, that's audio only, for your nice drive into work or subway ride or what have you. So we really appreciate you guys joining us for Spawn Daily, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.